The snow is melting, the birds are chirping, the gloves are popping, baseball is back, let's go! MLB offseason is coming to a close. The Twins were quite an active team this year. One of their biggest moves they made was trading for Marlins pitcher Pablo Lopez, who has been recently announced as the opening day starter. Cole, what's your thoughts? Do you think it should have been him? Should have been Joe Ryan? Where are we at?
Oh, I mean, I always love me some sexy Mr. Joe Ryan. You can't get enough of him. He's got the style. He's got the young age. I think eventually he's going to be our opening day starter for quite a few years yet. But Pablo Lopez is a veteran. He's been there, done that. He earned the starting day spot during spring training, WBC, everything, right? So I approve of the decision. I'm good with it. I miss that we're not going to have Luis Arraez in the lineup. Man, did he look good in the World Baseball Classic. That didn't make you feel so good as a Twins fan, but you know what? I cheer for the guy. I hope he kills it with the Marlins, and we all talk about how, man, I wish we still had him. But I hope we talk about it in the fact that Arraez is doing that good, and not because Lopez is doing bad.
Right.
But I think Lopez still has a lot of potential that he could really show here in Minnesota.
Oh, absolutely. And I think last year we kind of started to see flashes of that. You'd love to see Joe Ryan out there, the young guy, kind of hopefully the face of our pitching rotation for the next, who knows how many years. But I think Pablo Lopez is much more developed, and he's been there. So I'm okay with the move. I would have liked to see Ryan, but totally fine with Lopez in there. Speaking of lineups,
actually, just adding one thing on Joe Ryan too before we move into the lineup is that he's actually not starting till the third game. They're going Thursday, they're going with Lopez, and then Friday we have a day off, which I don't know. To me, that's really weird. I don't remember that normally happening. So we play the Royals on Thursday, then we have a day off Friday, and then on Saturday, Sonny Gray is going to start. So we're going righty, all back to back against the Royals. So makes sense. So they must be trying to think. I'm sure if it lined up correctly and they wanted Ryan to start a different game, like the home opener, I'm not sure if I've counted that out yet, but that could be what they're trying to line up for too, rather than starting him actual opening day.
Right. Yeah, no, that totally could be, because their home opener is Thursday the 6th, so it's 1 week from
so I think
opening day.
That would,
so
if Joe Ryan started on Sunday, which he is, that would line up to pretty close to him starting on.
Well, I think it gives the Twins the option to either go back to Lopez or to Ryan.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so Lopez is already locked in as the opening day starter. What isn't locked in, though, is the lineups. And we got some projections for you, Cole. I'll let you start it off with yours. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, lots of question marks still. I mean, we're only, right around the corner of opening day, and I'm still not set on exactly what the lineup's going to be. I think it's pretty obvious, though, that the Twins are going to be using Buxton in a DH role a lot more than we've even seen in the past. I don't think they're going to roll him out there in center field every day, especially now that they went and got Michael A. Taylor. And I think D. Gordon is a pretty stellar defensive position out there, too, and offensively, he's been stepping it up. So that's one of my projections. Is everybody's saying, Michael Taylor's going to be doing so much starting out in center, but I wouldn't be shocked if we see D. Gordon out there. Not D. Gordon, sorry, Nick Gordon out there quite a bit. I mean, I know he can play second base too, and obviously with Polanco starting on the IL and with Royce Lewis injured, yeah, we're going to see him at second base a bit more. But as time goes on, I think Taylor starts to kind of turn into the guy that comes in later in the innings when you really just need that defensive guy out there, because he's not necessarily the best hitter. He's definitely third in line after Buxton and D. Gordon. And man, Nick Gordon. Got D. Gordon on my mind today. Sorry, Nick, talking to your brother on the podcast. But so I think Buxton's going to be leading off, long story short. And I think he's still going to be DHing even on opening day. Correa obviously going to be at short. I think you put him 2 in the lineup. Go Miranda 3 in the lineup, put some pop in there. I thought that he was going to be at third base, but now it's starting to seem like he's probably going to be at first base, because I think Killaroff might be out as well. I didn't actually put that in my projections since I updated them, but So he may be moving over to first base, which may move Farmer over to third, or who knows, maybe we got some possibility for Edward Julian to he was the World Baseball Classic breakout in my mind. I mean, he stood out above the rest, played for Canada, killed it. I hope he's on this lineup. I really do. 50-50 shot still right now. But then you got Gallo. I think he's going to be out in left. Kepler in right. Vasquez catching. Mixing it up with Jeffers, depending on who's pitching, obviously. And yeah, it's a good lineup. I'm feeling pretty good about it this year. I feel like I say that a lot, but I really do feel good about it this year.
Yeah, I feel like what's different with this year than past years, I feel like we're pretty close to the amount of talent we have, kind of at the top of it, but I feel like there's just so much more depth. We have so much more lineup flexibility this year that we just haven't really had in years past, and I think that's kind of what's exciting a lot of fans.
Yeah, kind of a sneaky ad recently, too, is Willie Castro. Fantasy baseball, that's a name that I know just because he's the guy that you would add in the last several years that you're like, oh, I might as well add Willie Castro because he plays first base, second base, third base, shortstop, catcher, outfield. He plays every position, it seems like. I don't know if he catches, but he can play everywhere.
He probably could.
And he's probably. And he's been doing pretty good in spring training, so I don't know for sure if he's going to be on the lineup. I think he will be on the bench, but they could put him anywhere. Just like, obviously with Kyle Farmer, too, the ad of him, like, he could be anywhere in this lineup. He can catch, Kyle Farmer, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I think that's the tough part about trying to predict a starting lineup for this team is, like, there's 4 or 5 guys that literally could go either way. Like, it's totally about matchups and whatnot, but starting off similar with you, I'm starting my lineup with Buxton. I mean, what a great mix of speed and power. Like, why wouldn't you want that guy leading off your team? I agree. I think he should be a DH until we get to, kind of crunch time, postseason ball. Like, I don't think there's any reason to put extra miles on his body. We've seen in past years that he's had injury issues. So, yeah, I'm all for keeping him out of the field as much as we can and kind of keeping him healthy for the end of the year. 2, I'm going a little different from you here. I think I like Joey Gallo. I think, keep the power rolling, some good, decent speed too. And then I'm slotting in Correa at 3, Miranda at 4, Kepler, Larnick, Gordon, Vasquez, Taylor. That's where I'm sitting right now. I love Miranda at the 4. I think you could even switch him and Gallo around too. I think they're pretty interchangeable. But yeah, I'm hoping to see a lot from Gallo this year. I think he can if he can kind of work on his contact game and, get on base a little more and cut the strikeouts down, I think you look at him as a totally different player.
Yeah, I mean, there's nowhere to go with his strikeouts other than down. I don't think he can strike out any more than he has the last couple of years. I mean, he's close to breaking records every time and hitting under 200. It's not ideal if you look at him. If you don't look at the home runs and RBIs, he is not a major league hitter. But the shift, I mean, we'll talk about rules later, but I mean, that could have a huge impact on why I would consider your options of putting him like number 2, like you said, in the order even. But I feel like he's still going to start out kind of lower in the order. He's going to start, in my mind, you put him 5, 6, kind of see if he's able to start beating the shift more. We've seen it in spring training, but I don't trust spring training numbers. You're playing against a lot of different guys. You're trying new things. It's like saying, oh, we did really good today at practice, I know you're playing against very good players, but it doesn't count. Let's see what he can do when it really counts, so. One thing on Buxton, you said waiting until playoffs. You know what I would do during the season is when you've got a lineup and that day you're giving Buxton, you've already decided you're probably giving him a rest day, but if all of a sudden you get to that 7th, 8th inning and you are in a tight game, Buxton better be coming in that lineup, especially in a home game, jumping in that lineup, whether it's in the DH spot or in an outfield spot, and you just make it work, because then you could literally... pretty much anyone in this lineup. Obviously, you're not going to, pinch hit Buxton for Correa or Miranda, but I feel like anyone else in the lineup you just said, I would consider pinch hitting Buxton for if he's on the bench at any time. You could drop him in there, whether it's in, and you can move your entire lineup around. It doesn't matter who it is. Even if he pinch hit for the catcher, you could move your whole lineup around and make it work. Like you could, I don't know. That's where I feel like the flexibility is going to be really big for Buxton's sake, because that's what we've seen. We got to keep him healthy one way or another, and we got to win games also. And there was a lot of games last year I felt like where Correa or Buxton were sitting on the bench, and it was a one-run game in the 8th inning with 2 runners on, and they stayed on the bench. And it's just like, I don't want to see that this year. I want to see him go all in. Those guys need to be in those big spots.
No, 100%.
Unless they're hurt.
Right. No, I couldn't agree more with that. I think that's the exact sentiment you got to have in the league nowadays. Like every single game, all 162, everyone matters. And any chance you have to go steal a game, like I feel like you got to be putting your best foot forward at all times, whether or not you're trying to work on some load management, give guys rest, whatever. At the end of the day, you got to win games, you know?
Right. Especially against the Guardians. Oh, my God. Last year, I felt like that's the whole reason they won is because we just collapsed against them every game of the season.
Yeah. Well, hopefully some of these guys we added in the offseason can help us not do that. We'll kind of get into that, talk about some of the key signings, starting off Joey Gallo, a 1-year, $11 million deal, kind of a prove-it deal for him. You know, we've seen flashes of kind of an all-star caliber season from him, but we've also seen some very concerning strikeout rates and averages, so it's definitely, you know, kind of prove-it season in my opinion for him. And I'm a fan of this signing. What about you?
Yeah, for sure. I think if there was anything that made me a little skeptical about the signing off the beginning is that J.D. Martinez got pretty much the same deal. And if you asked me, do you want J.D. Martinez or Joey Gallo? Like, I would have leaned towards J.D. Martinez. But the more you look at it, J.D. is just pretty much going to DH every day. Right. And the Twins just don't need that. So for a guy that's going to be playing the field and can hit like a DH, I'm happy to see Joey Gallo hit some bombas at Target Field this year for sure. Oh, I'm good with the 1 year, $11 million. I'm good with it. I love 1-year deals, to be honest. They're perfect. If he completely is absolutely tearing it up, and Buxton and Correa gets hurt, and everything goes to hell, boom, trade him. He's trade value. But if everything's going right, you just secured quite an opportunity, and he's going to continue to try to play well. There's not going to be any hate because he's just trying to get a contract with any team. You know, he's playing for himself and for the team, because if the team does good, he's going to do good. So I love 1-year contracts these days.
Yeah, and I mean, going from a market like New York to a market like Minnesota, where it's one of the
New York and LA.
Right,
last year too.
Two of the harshest markets on players in the media, to Minnesota, the land of, you know, Minnesota nice and everything. So hopefully that can help his confidence, and maybe that's all it is just a mental game, which is really what baseball is 90%. But
I think it's really going to come down to strikeouts though, because Minnesota nice, yes, but like look what happened to Miguel Sano. Yeah. I think the media, not just the media, but just fans in general, really started to go after him. He had a lot of clutch home runs. He had some big home runs. He had some pop. He was a great player, but he struck out so much that people just couldn't take it anymore, and then his game started to go down from there, and hopefully that doesn't happen to Gallo, but I do know Minnesota fans do not like the strikeouts. So we'll see what happens there.
No, definitely not. I don't think any fans like strikeouts. So
yeah, unless it's Mike Trout, then I'm fine with it.
Do we want to get back into Pablo Lopez? I know we kind of talked about him earlier in the podcast.
I mean, he's big also. I mean, if you look at just the starting rotation, I guess, of what we've added, you kind of forget that we added Tyler Mahle too. It's Mahle. I've always said Mahle, but now apparently it is Mahle. Tyler Mahle, he is a huge add. I mean, he came from Cincinnati. He was working his way back in, learning how to play with his team. We haven't even had him for a year. Same with Jorge Lopez. You know, I mean, you got some guys that we added at the deadline last year who I think could be really clutch this season between Pablo Lopez and Mahle. I mean, I'm excited to see those guys pitch for sure. And Kyle Farmer, too, we got from Cincinnati in the offseason. That's a big one. Like we just talked about, can play him anywhere. Correa. I mean, all our signings. Michael A. Taylor. I'm happy with every single one. It felt like all of the needs that we had last year, they fixed, except for one. And that one need is Emilio Pagan. They didn't fix that. They re-signed him, and I'm just still so upset about it. I wish they would have gone out and grabbed somebody, some reliever for a bunch of money and just dealt with it and let him go. But apparently the stats show behind the stats that he's good. So
he gets one more ride.
It can only go up from here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it felt like every single move they're making, it's like, oh, nice, good.
Yeah. Sweet. Even like Donovan Solano, like some of these small moves, like we just talked about Willie Castro, these moves that they're making that you're like, you could replace anyone who gets hurt with major league talent. It's not all-star necessarily major league talent, but it's good enough to replace them for a few weeks or give them a rest or whatever you need, or watch them over in St. Paul with the Saints.
There you go.
Either way, got a great team in both spots.
Yeah, seriously. So that was kind of about it for the offseason moves. Now, looking at more of a wider view of the league, talking about some of the rule changes, I think first off, the shift, no longer happening. You need two guys on each side of the base. This is a very divided topic, I feel like. I feel like it's either you're a baseball purist and think guys should be in positions where they should be, or you're an analytic guy where it's like, hey, if you're going to keep hitting it here, I'm going to put my guys over here. So I'm curious to see where you're sitting on this.
And I feel like we've talked about this before, and I can't remember where you stand, but I loved the shift. I thought it was awesome. I thought, you know what, if you're a player that can't hit the opposite way when you have to and you can't adjust based off where everyone is, like that is what pro athletes do. Like even no matter what sport you're talking, I don't care what it is, pickleball, you name it. If you play those first 5 points and you realize like, hey, that guy's got a bad backhander, that receiver he's on his toes or he's on his heels and not his toes. Like you adjust your game to that. And that's what I wish that the MLB would have done properly is I wish they would have started playing like Japan, started bunting, started doing things that force teams to not be able to shift, not want to shift, rather than the league having to step in and say, hey, no more shifting. And if your back heel is touching the grass, that's a automatic ball for the other player. That happened actually just a couple of games ago to Joe Ryan. He was pitching, and one of the infielders on the Twins, I'm not sure who it was, had his heel step back on the edge of the grass, just his heel, and it would have been strike 3, but instead they called it a ball because he was touching the grass. I don't like that. I'm not a fan of that. I would rather that they give warnings or like say, hey, like don't do that next time. But I'm not a huge fan of it. But you know what? For the fact that we signed Joey Gallo, we got to adjust as well. Like that's what I just said. You have to be able to adjust. If the league changed the rules, you adjust to the rules, and that's what I'm excited to see them do. And more offense is always fun.
Yeah, I agree. I'm kind of in the same boat as you, where it's like you're a professional athlete. They're giving you one side of the field wide open. I know it's easier said than done, but put the ball over there. Like you should. There's things you can do as like the offense in the situation to make it not a positive play to shift. Like you said, you can do bunts. There's so much you can do where it's like, I don't know. I don't like the idea of the MLB kind of trying to micromanage the game. I feel like that's what a lot of these changes the past couple of years have kind of felt like. And so I'm just not a huge fan, but also it doesn't bother me that much, you know?
Yep, I agree. Very much in the same boat. I think it's on the same thing. Like we think they should have just adjusted the shift. They didn't. They just the way it was, and so now you're going to have to adjust to the MLB's rules. Either way, you're in adjusting. That's what sports is. It's just adjusting. Exactly.
And another new rule they're going to have to adjust to is the new pitch clock, which I love it for the fact I love the fact they're speeding up the games. I think that's a much needed thing. No one wants to sit through 3.5 hours of baseball. I mean, not no one. Obviously, there's plenty of people that want to, but if you're trying to grow your game, I think it's a good move on that aspect. But I also think it's disrupted just the flow of the game, and you're breaking up guys' routines, and you know there's just a lot that messes with the core game of baseball when you do that it's like makes me a little hesitant on it. I don't know where's your head at.
Yeah, I was very much in that headspace going into spring training of this is dumb, I don't like it, just let them play the game. They've always played the game. But the more I thought about it, and actually my aunt, who's a big Twins and baseball fan, she texted me and was like, oh, I love the pitch clock, because it just felt like the game just kind of moved along. It was paced. Like, the innings didn't take too long. Like, everything was just like, you weren't watching the game and then end up on your phone waiting for the at-bat to finish or something to happen the at-bat. You're actually just watching the at-bat. So I get it in that aspect. You're really keeping people's attention in a world where nobody has long attention spans anymore. And obviously baseball has gotten a very bad rap of like, it's kind of like Avatar, of like, oh, it's a 4-hour movie. You really want to go to that? No, nobody wants to sit there that long, because you got a lot of things you can do nowadays. Like, it's back in the day when baseball was America's pastime, there wasn't like a million breweries in the area and a million other things that you could leave the game to go do that are also fun, and other sports and other venues and all in one place. Spending that much time in one location watching one thing is a lot. I do it, but it is a lot. I get it for people that didn't play the game or don't know the game that well. So I did wish during spring training, with all the issues that were popping up with the pitch clock, that they would adjust the rules to be a little bit more of a warning system for the players, where, in your at bat, if you get one warning about the pitch clock and after that you don't get another one, or, the umpire's discretion or not, even more whether or not they think you should be warned or you're actively choosing not to. I don't think you should like necessarily have like, oh, that's the warning he gets, next one it gets him, because then you start to use that rule to your advantage too. Like, it should be the umpire's discretion whether or not they're taking too long. And I do like pitchers being able to quick pitch. Like, Nestor Cortez does that a lot. But now when he quick pitches, he also has to like make eye contact with the batter, because that batter has also that time to get in the box. They kind of had that before, but now they're a lot more strict on it. So I just am afraid that it's going to cause a lot of confusion amongst younger fans who are playing in high schools or middle schools and are like, wait, what just happened? Or there's going to be a lot of situations where somebody's going to have to explain to somebody else sitting next to them why that wasn't a strikeout or why that was a strikeout, even though they didn't throw the ball. And Not a big fan of something like that. I think warnings are fine, but I don't know. That one I'm not as big a fan of, for sure, the pitch clocks. But I do like the speeding up of the game. I just don't know if they're doing it the right way yet.
Right. I think there's definitely some wrinkles in it that need to be worked out, but I think it's a step in the right direction, for sure.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
Is it active during the playoffs, or do you know?
I don't know that for sure. I would assume so, because
I know like the extra inning, the runner on second rule, like that goes away. So I wasn't sure if that was in like the same situation or not, but
not positive. But I would think that would be something that still would be active in a playoff scenario, because you're going to get used to it by that time, and it's part of the game now. If you're making it that rule, you can't go and change that. Where the ghost runner in the extra inning, that's not really part of the game. That was just that was stupid. More trying to save athletes, I felt like, more than it was trying to speed up the end of the game. It was trying to avoid players playing 18 innings in one day and then coming back the next day and playing another 15.
Right.
Because that's just, that seemed like a union thing for me, in my guess. But the other big rule, I don't know, let me ask you what your thoughts are, is the pickoff rule. Have you seen, so they can only throw over to first base 2 times, the pitcher, and then the third time that they try to pick that player off, if they don't get them, they automatically get the base.
I get it. I understand what they're trying to do. But again, I feel like it's anti-baseball. Like, you're telling me I can't go keep picking back at a guy I'm trying to keep him close so he can't steal. Like, I get you. Again, you're trying to speed up the game, but it's just, you're messing with it too much. And I feel like this is one of those times I'm not a fan of this one.
Let me have you put yourself, what about if you're in the shoes of the runner? How would you take advantage of this rule? Like, is that something where you try to get them to throw over?
Oh, 100%.
So you have that huge lead next on the third time?
Right, because you get that big lead, you're either going or you're, like, when I used to play baseball, when I used to play ball, I wasn't the fastest guy. So I knew I wasn't going to be able to steal that base. So when I would take a big lead and move like I'm really aggressive, I'm about to go, and all my mind is thinking, if I see him move towards me at all, everything's back. So I feel like you can get into that situation where, you looks like you have a massive lead, but you can get back because So I think that could kind of come up, and it's just, I just can't get my head around that one. I'm not a fan.
Well, we've seen Buxton in normal years without this rule steal 100% of bases that he attempts. Do you think we see him with an increase in stolen bases because of this rule?
Yeah, and I think this with a mix of the other new rule, the larger bases, they're trying to incentivize more people to steal bases because I feel like, wasn't it because of the analytics? I could be wrong, but the analytics of stealing bases were like not in your favor with most guys. Right. So I think that was kind of why we saw the decline of the stolen base. But hopefully, I mean,
and also safety was a big thing.
Sure.
It didn't seem worth it to steal a base if there was a potential that you could get hurt because there was a lot of injuries of fingers or hands or arms or getting hit by the ball or you name it, and safety just didn't make sense to have to try to get that extra base.
Yeah, I mean, stolen bases are fun. I mean, I'd love to see more of them, but I think when you're kind of messing with the game this much, I don't think it's worth it. But I don't know. That's just me.
Yep. We'll see what happens with all the rules.
Right.
It's an interesting year.
Yeah, kind of pivoting off the rule topic, kind of bring up some possible prospects we may see making a statement with the club this year. First off, I think the most recent on everyone's mind is Eduardo Julian. Just had a massive World Baseball Classic. As you mentioned earlier, some other big names: Brooks Lee, Royce Lewis, Matt Wallner, Louis Varland. Who are you most excited to see, and who do you think is going to make the biggest leap this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still a question. I think whether Eduard Julian or Julian, I'm not sure exactly how you say it. Yeah, we'll know once he makes the team. But
yeah,
I think he is somebody that could make the biggest statement and kind of come out of kind of nowhere in a way. Like, we haven't been talking about him for years. I don't feel like I haven't been like in the way that we have for Royce Lewis or a guy like Brooks Lee, some of those first-round draft picks. But, man, he has been crushing it in the spring. He crushed it in the World Baseball Classic. He's like, feels like one of the hottest hitters right now, to be honest. So I hope that he makes it up, and I hope that we see him. I think it's going to depend a lot on guys like Jorge Polanco. If we see Jorge Polanco out for a longer extended period of time, or Royce Lewis getting delayed in his comeback, that's where guys like Julian are going to really be able to make a statement. And that kind of just goes with a lot of these guys. I think how big of a statement they get to make is all based on injuries from the season. We know someone's going to get hurt. We know it's going to happen. Maybe it's Buxton again, maybe it's Correa, maybe it's Miranda, you name it. But one of these guys is going to come up and they're going to fill in, and they were going to either earn their spot or they're going to be there until he comes back. But I really think that Royce Lewis, by the end of the year, is going to be he's going to be a household name in Minnesota, where Julian, I think he could still make a statement, could be really good, but Royce Lewis to me is the guy. Like, he's going to make, him and Correa are going to be like buddy teammates. They are going to be working together. They're going to be playing third and short or second and third short, it's all around the infield. Same with Brooks Lee. But also, I do think that if the Twins are really in the running coming the deadline, one of those names that you just listed will be traded. That's my projection. I think that we have such a depth of prospects that if you got to go out there and get one more high-end closer and a starter or something, and you got to trade a big name, this could be the year they do that, But otherwise, you get to next year with all these guys. I mean, you're sitting good. And some of the local guys like Matt Wallner and Louis Varland from Minnesota, I mean, we always love to see them out there. So, and Emmanuel Rodriguez, he may not be up this year. I think he will see some time. He'll definitely at least get to the Saints, I believe, and see some time there. But he hit some big home runs in the spring training, including like a 3-run home run off of, I don't know if it was off of Garrett Cole, I think. And then he hit another one off of somebody against the Yankees, basically single-handedly carrying the Twins to a win against the Yankees in spring training. And And then Austin Martin, he has a UCL injury, so I really thought we would have him pretty soon, but him and Simon Woods Richardson are the two guys that we got in the Jose Barrios trade. I think we're going to see Simon Woods Richardson filling in for some back-end relief. I don't think we're going to see him as a starter or anything like that, but Austin Martin may see some time. Second base, first base, outfield. He can kind of play all over now. But we'll see how his injury goes. And he's had a couple fluky years in a row now. Not his ideal seasons for sure, if you asked him, I'm sure. But I think any of these guys could make a big impact on the team.
Yeah, and I mean, what a great situation to be in as the Twins. I mean, you got so many great young prospects just on the edge of kind of making some noise in the majors. And, you know, you're a team where it's like you're going to be kind of an edge of playoff contention type team come late July, and you're going to have some tough decisions to make, whether or not you see these guys being corner pieces of your franchise for the next 5 to 10 years, or if it's time to move on and go get some established talent. But taking a look go ahead.
And one last thing on that too, like the deadline goes, whether we're deep in contention this year of a deep playoff run, or if it ends up being next year, I think is whether or not you're going to see either Royce Lewis be traded or Brooks Lee, because between Royce Lewis, Brooks Lee, and Correa, like those are guys that that's 3 top-end all-star shortstops if they all turn out, you know, and you don't necessarily need all 3. 2, yeah, but I don't know. One of those 3 may get traded. Obviously not Correa.
Hopefully not. Well, let's take a look at, you know, the rest of the AL Central and some of the things that, you know, the Sox and the Guardians, some of the moves they made. Some of the most, like the key ads for the White Sox were Benintendi, Mike Clevenger, and Elvis Andrus. They lost Jose Abreu and Hendricks, 2 of their kind of faces of their franchise for the past kind of, 5-ish years. So those are some tough losses and not great ads, in my opinion.
Right. Jose Abreu especially is a big loss. Hendricks, I guess technically they've lost him for who knows how long. Like he's still on the team, but he's got cancer right now. So eventually he'll be back, but it's just like when, and just not having him at the back end of your rotation. I don't know. To me, the ads of Tendy, Clevenger, and Elvis Andrus is not. It's not an upgrade over losing Jose Abreu and Liam Hendricks in my mind.
No, definitely not. And I feel like the White Sox feel like a team that are just a couple pieces away from contending. So to see this passive of a offseason from them, I feel like definitely for Sox fans has to be disappointing. But, I mean, as a Twins fan, I'd love to see it.
Yeah, and obviously, to me, the Tigers are way out of it. They're not going to be in contention. We can forget about them. The Royals have a chance. Like they're not a terrible team. They've got Bobby Witt. They've got some good players for sure. Like I think they can put up a fight against anyone, but on a long-term scale, I don't think they're going to end up winning the division compared to these other teams. But the White Sox have kind of been a little bit over and underrated the last few years because they get overrated early, but then they get underrated during the season because they kind of have been ending up like the Twins where Luis Robert was hurt or Eloy Jimenez is hurt. They have all these big injuries. It's not always to the same guy like the Twins have had, like Buxton hurt, you know, but they've been spreading out their injury bug pretty good. And, I mean, it's not the best ads in my mind, but it's also they still have a lot of talent on that team. And the Guardians scare me much more. I mean, just watching them in the playoffs and how young their team was last year, and now they're just all 1 year older, and they literally have that playoff experience, and they added Josh Bell. I mean, that's kind of what they needed. I think it would have been even bigger if they added Jose Abreu. I believe they went after him too, but Josh Bell could go out there and lead the league in home runs, you know, and that's now they don't have to rely on a guy like Josh Naylor to do that. That's big. Naylor's good, but he's no Josh Bell.
No. Definitely
and
not.
Losing Clevenger, I mean, they got depth in their starting rotation. They always do, always have. Zach Plesac's the biggest question mark at the back end of that rotation. He's very good, but inside, they don't love him, I don't think, in the clubhouse.
No, and that's always a problem. I feel like in a sport where you're spending so much time with the same guys. You're seeing them every day. You gotta have a locker room that has your back. Otherwise, that problems definitely do rise out of that. But let's talk about our season-long predictions for the Twins. What do you think their record's going to finish at?
What did we end up at last year? Do you remember? I mean, we fell off just under 500, but I don't think we get to 100 wins this year. But I'm gonna go ahead and say that we end up with 94 wins. I'm 94.
Going to be a little more greedy than you. I was at 99. I think we're going to be right at the 100 mark, but just not going to be able to break through. But I do think this is the year that pieces click, and maybe, just maybe, we could win a playoff game.
The only reason I'm a little lower, I mean, 94 is still high. Don't get me wrong. Like, the Guardians won the division last year, and they only won 92. So 94 means we're going to run away with the division, right? But I don't know. The more I'm saying it out loud, too, I'm starting to think it might be a little lower than that, actually. I'm starting to feel like if the Guardians won the division last year with 92, I don't know if we're going to have as many wins as them because of one other rule change that we didn't mention. We're going to be playing every team in the MLB this year. And we all know our division, like last year, we played a lot more games against our division and less games against teams in other divisions. It's going to be a lot more spread out this year. And our division is definitely one of the weakest in baseball, if not the weakest division. So that's not going to help our overall record. I still think we win the division, but I'm actually going to go a lot lower than 94. And I'm going to change mine, and I'm going to say 88, and we win the division. Last year, we only won 78, so that's a 10-win difference. But I'm going to go 88. I'm changing mine. Change my mind once I remember the rule change.
Fair enough. Where's your Twins MVP?
Twins MVP, I think it's Byron Buxton. I know that's a basic, classic choice, but I think he stays healthy. I think they use him properly. They figured it out. They know when he can and can't play. They know his body better than ever. I think he plays a career amount of games, and he is the MVP of the Twins. And when he's in the lineup, he is absolutely tearing it up. He's not going to be out there in the field, though, as much as we usually see.
I think if we see above 130 games out of Buxton, I think, he probably ends up as the Twins MVP. But
honestly, above 100. Like, on a full season, you see him missing only 62 games. That sounds terrible, but if he makes 100 games on this season, he could still be the MVP of the Twins.
Yeah, and that just speaks to the talent that he brings. He's that good of a player. But for me, I'm going to go a little different. Take a little better odds on the sports book. I'm going to go Jose Miranda. I like it. I think this is his season to kind of break out to the league. I'm projecting 35 plus home runs. I think he's going to really get after it this year.
Little Albert Pujols, I've heard said.
There you go. Switching to the other side of the baseball, who's your Twins Cy Young this year?
Tyler Mahle. I love Pablo Lopez. I love Joe Ryan, but I think Tyler Mahle has a lot left in the tank. I think they'll let him pitch, and not pull him. Like, I think they're going to be a little more cautious with Joe Ryan because he's so young still and not let him throw 110 pitches. But I think if Mahle's dealing, they're going to let him deal. So I think he ends up being our Cy Young.
I like that little dark horse play. I really do like that pick. I'm going to go a little different and go to the bullpen. Mr. Johan Duran.
Yeah, you think he's going to close?
I think I don't know if he's going to start as our closer, but I think he should be our closer by the end of the year. And I think he just lights it up. I mean, you're talking about just an absolute electric factory, a guy who pumps gas, movement with his stuff has just nasty movement on it. Yeah. I'm all in on Johan Duran.
I like that. I think he passes up Emmanuel Clase for top fantasy closer drafted in the next year or two.
I like the take. All right.
But I think Jorge Lopez is still going to get the first 3-4 saves, and then they'll pivot over to Duran. But that's just a guess. Yeah. Lopez also struggled at the end of the year last year, Jorge.
And I don't mind Jorge as our closer either, but I think if you're thinking of a closer, what comes to mind is someone who can come in and just shut it down, and I think that's the type of player Duran is.
Right. So I think you'll see him. I mean, we've obviously seen the role of closer change so much in the last few years. Duran is going to be that number one back end guy. If you've got Mike Trout and Ohtani coming up, though, in the 8th inning, you put Duran out there and Lopez in the 9th. And if it's the opposite, put Lopez out there, Duran in the 9th, you know? Whenever 100%. You got to face the highest, best guys, instead of saying he's our 9th inning guy. I don't think that's even going to be a thing anymore by the next couple years.
I feel like that's a very archaic kind of old school style of thought that it's just,
and I'm all
the
for
game's
that.
passed
That's
it up.
Smart. Yeah, it's just smart baseball.
100%. So to finish this section off, who is going to be your biggest surprise of the year, good or bad?
My biggest surprise, I'm going to go with also my Rookie of the Year pick for the Twins, which will be Edouard Julien. I do think he makes it up. I do think that Jorge Polanco's on his way out the door. I think maybe even we trade him or we just use him to kind of play him a little different role than he's played in the past. I love Jorge Polanco. He's been around forever, but I think Julien at second base makes sense. I think he could hit 30 bombs and really be a surprising player that a lot of casual Twins fans have not heard of. And he has a chance to not only win the Twins Rookie of the Year, I think he could have a chance at the Rookie of the Year overall.
For sure.
If he gets to play.
Right, and that's the biggest part is how much is Polanco going to see the field and how much is the manager is going to want to, be switching up the lineup and getting them in, whatnot. But for my surprising player, I'm going to have to go with Joey Gallo. I said it earlier. I think with a mix of just being in a new team, a new system, new hitting coach, you're taking away the shift. And, I mean, we've seen flashes in the past, and I think he's going to catch a lot of people off guard this year.
Can I ask your thought on one other player that we have not mentioned yet and that could be surprising, good or bad? Max Kepler.
Do you
see him playing over 100 games this season?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like it's hard to say no just based on, injuries and whatnot. But with how much, I don't know. That's a good question. You kind of stumped me on this.
He's a big question mark on the team this year to me. I mean, I think if you get Max Kepler going out there and being the Max Kepler of the past, the guy that's getting every time there's runners on base, he's hitting 400. Every time it's late in the game and you need a base runner, he's getting on. He's always been one of the most clutch hitters in my mind. Maybe not the best hitter on our team, but I still think he's one of the best clutch hitters. And if he gets back to that, that could push us to 90-plus wins.
Well, and I think that's the biggest question. If we've seen a lot of struggles over the past few seasons, and it's just, you said, he's a big question mark right now and really can just go either way with this season. So,
and if he's not, I think he's gone, and Matt Wallner eventually takes over.
Yeah, I agree. But, well, I think that's about it. Is there anything else you want to touch on?
No, I think we hit it all. It was a good opening day podcast, Alex. I feel good about it. I'm excited for the season to start.
Oh, cannot wait. April 6th cannot come soon enough. Make sure you go check out all our social medias, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, everything. Go give us a follow. Give us some support over there. It's Hot Dish Sports everywhere you go. Until next time, go Twins. Peace.